real flat, wide, broad, flat, withered horse. And the other thing is when you set that saddle on the horse, you don't want it rocking back and forth like this. You want it so that you have the same amount of pressure on the front of the saddle, the middle of the saddle, and the back of the saddle. We'll look at this horse here, and this saddle here fits this horse really good. Get over here. You see, this is a very broad withered horse, and when you put that saddle in, you should be able to stick one or two fingers right in here between the gullet and the withers here. If you have a saddle that's too wide, it sets down on the withers and it'll start rubbing on the withers, and that will really cause irritation on the horse. If you have a saddle that is just a little bit too wide, you can put several pads. We just have one pad on this horse, but as you add another pad, that makes those withers wider, and so you can take a saddle that's fairly wide, and if you put on 2 or 3 pads, you can make those withers a little wider, and so a wide saddle may still be able to fit the horse. Okay? So we've talked about selection of the saddle. We've talked about it must fit the rider and it must fit the horse. Care of the saddle, probably the biggest problem, the biggest enemy of leather saddles is dirt. You can rinse, on a feedlot, many times you'll get manure and dirt on your saddle. If you're out in the rain, really water doesn't hurt leather very much as long as it's kept clean and as long as it's kept oiled. If you oil your saddle, there's all different kinds of products that dressings and oil. You can wash the dirt off your saddle, scrub it with a toothbrush or a brush of any kind, and get that dirt and dust off of there. But before you use that saddle, that saddle is going to get kind of hard and brittle probably. You need to put on some kind of a dressing or an oil on there. The important thing is there's all different kinds of dressings. Some are very oily, and I would not use a real oily dressing on the seat or on the fenders of here where you're going to be sitting, because that'll come off on your clothing. Your straps, your rear skirts here, you can put more oil on there because you're not going to be sitting on there and your clothes are not going to be rubbing. But if you put a real oily dressing right in the seat here, it's going to make your clothes really oily. The key thing there is keep your leather clean, and you can wash it off. The water doesn't hurt as long as you put some oil or dressing back on there before you use it. If you wash the saddle, it gets wet, it'll get really stiff many times if you've washed all the oil out of it, but you might need to add some oil back or a dressing, leather conditioner back on before you use that saddle. Okay? We're going to talk now, we've done talking about saddles, let's talk about cinches. There's several different kinds of cinches. We've got all the way from a strand cinch like this. This may be from wool or maybe from other synthetic product. But these cinches are fairly strong. But the key thing to remember is when they get old, these will start getting rotten, and you may see a cinch that's got several broken strands. When you start seeing broken strands on a cinch, that is when you probably need to replace the cinch. You can wash these cinches if they get dirty, but it takes quite a while for a cinch like this to dry out. Depending on the temperature, the humidity, it takes quite a while for a cinch like this to dry out because that water and that sweat will get into these fibers. It takes a long time to dry out. There's some other cinches like this that have got kind of a felt pad with a nylon back, and you can wash them. They stay strong, and nylon will stay strong. And you can wash them and they will dry out fairly quick, but probably not as quick as a neoprene cinch. The neoprene cinch is something that does not absorb water. You can use this, and if it gets wet, you take it off, wipe it off, and it's probably as dry as it was when you put it on a couple hours ago. So the neoprene cinches stay strong. Most of them have a nylon strap on the back, and so the neon cinches, you can wash them a lot easier. They dry out quicker than either the felt or especially the fiber or the strand cinches. The key thing to remember, like I've said, is you want to have plenty of strands. You want to have plenty of good strands. This is not a very good cinch here because it doesn't have very many strands. It's only got about 15 strands, where that one there probably has 20 to 30 strands. The biggest problem is you need to watch is when you see a couple of these strands start breaking, or you see some of them get stuck together and sweat and mud gets caked on here, that's when many of these strands become weak, because some of them are made out of wool, some of them are made out of some other synthetic products. But when they start getting frayed here, or you start getting some frayed strands here, that is when you need to switch cinches or wash them. And if they're frayed, you need to just throw them away. If they're just dirty and caked with mud, many times you can wash them, but then you have to let them set for a while and hang out before they dry. So that's kind of the kinds of cinches. There are leather cinches that many people in the show ring use. Those probably, anytime leather, like I said, you need to keep them clean. Many times leather cinches get dirty, and I don't think they last near as long as a neoprene or a felt nylon cinch like this. The last thing we'll talk about here is pads, and I think pads really fall into 3 different categories. You have a woven pad like this. It's a woven pad. These pads are easy to wash. You could, if they get matted like this, you can throw them in the washing machine or throw them in a bucket or tub, let them soak a little while, and then hose them off, and they dry out fairly quick. If you have good temperatures. A second kind of pad is called a fleece pad. Some of these are a fleece pad and have a coating on one side, and some of them have the fleece coating on both sides. These cinches are very easy to wash. They have a lot of padding here, but they're very easy to wash. But the key thing is you don't want to get matted where you have where this gets hard and matted with mud and manure and sweat, because that will irritate a horse. So we have the woven pads that wash very easily. They dry out very quickly. These also wash very easily. Hose them off, and they'll dry out, but probably not quite as quick as your woven pads. And then you have your hair pads or some other kind of pads that are fairly thick. They're durable, but many times they're very hard to wash. If you wash these, it takes a long time for them to dry out. And so as I ride horses, I try to keep my fleece pad or my woven pad closest to the horse and put these on, because these are good padding. They will really build up the withers. They help the horse keep the horse comfortable with the saddle, but they're not very easy to wash and dry out. As they do dry out, I've tried washing some of them, but many times the bedding inside, the fluffiness inside will ball up, and it takes a long time for these to ever dry out. So if you're going to be using several pads, I keep the woven pad or the fleece pad next to the horse, because they are the easiest to wash, and then the hair pads may be next to the saddle. I'll show you an example of a bad pad. This is the pad here that needs to be washed. When any of these pads get dirty, when the horses sweat, especially if they're shedding hair, they'll get sweat and mud and manure on these pads here, and then they will become hard, and there'll be hard spots, and that is really not comfortable. It's kind of like you wearing dirty socks. It's not comfortable for this to be next to the horse, and so this pad should be washed, or it should be thrown away and a new pad. So that kind of is a little bit about pads. There are 3 kinds. There's the fleece pad, the woven pad, and the hair pad. The key to all of them is keep them clean. Many times you can't wash these and get them very clean. You may have to just throw these away if they get matted. But the other 2 kinds, if you wash them when they get matted, when they get hard, when they get brittle, it's going to be a lot more comfortable for your horse, and you're going to have a lot more happy, successful, comfortable ride with your horse.